Hello, model train fans. Welcome to the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder and operator of the layout, and your host for a special review of the Smokebox Graphics reflective tape. In this case, the yellow reflective tape. A lot of people have been commenting on the use of the Smokebox Graphics reflective tape for both locomotive sills. This is the safety reflective tape that all modern locomotives and cars have to have. And it is prevalent about 2015 and on. I think that was when they decided that all locomotives and all of the cars had to have this reflective tape, either in yellow or white. And on the Union Pacific, they use yellow for the locomotives sills that are all yellow, and then the cars, they use either white or yellow depending on the actual road that is working with the particular model. Now, I purchased a bunch of locomotives from Scale Trains, the AC 4400s, and they all came with the red sills. This was what the Union Pacific locomotives looked like before 2015, and they had the red sills, and red was not allowed for reflective tape, which is kind of too bad. But anyway, they was not allowed. It had to be the yellow reflective tape, and I have been using microscale decals for this, and people recommended in comments to try the Smokebox Graphics reflective tape. So this is not a decal, it's a tape. Now, I was a little hesitant to do the tapes because of the thickness of it. So anyway, I have the tape for the cars, which is just a bunch of short yellow reflective tape, and then also the tape for the locomotives, which is includes some long strips of tape that will go along the sills. And this is, of course, the yellow, and I'm not sure what the 5 is. Maybe that's the model number of it. But anyway, you have a bunch of long ones, and then also some not so long ones, and then some short ones. And so we're going to go ahead and try this out, see how well it goes on. And I did have a couple of comments about it. It is definitely thicker than than using a decal. So that's definitely the case. For the locomotives, as I put it on here on the sill is kind of in a little bit of an indentation, so you really cannot tell the thickness of the tape at all along the sill. So when I look at this reflective tape on one locomotive and a decal on the other locomotive, I really can't tell that one is thicker than the other. They both look pretty much the same. On the cars, you definitely can tell about the thickness of the tape, which really isn't too bad, because if you look at the prototype and see the reflective tape on the prototype, much of it is put on after the model was painted at when it was manufactured. So there actually is some thickness to it as you on the prototype. So that doesn't look too bad to see some thickness on the model. Alright, so if you look at the procedure I'm using here, I just kind of laid it down a little bit, and then what's kind of nice about this is that you can cut it while it's on the sill. So I'm cutting it because I want to leave some of the safety reporting and so forth on there. Now, one thing that is kind of a little difficult, you notice I'm kind of struggling here. The tape doesn't stay straight. If you pull it just any little bit, so I kind of pulled it a little bit when I was cutting it, and it right away curled on me. I was still able to get it to go back down, and if you notice, I cut it there again. And so it really wasn't too bad on that, and but it was a little bit difficult sometimes. If you have any kind of a tension on the tape, it will curl up quite a bit, which makes it a little bit more difficult to put on. Once it was on now, if you notice, I'm trying to get it exactly where it's supposed to go, and was kind of using the back of the knife here. Now I notice it came back up again. It's not what I wanted, so I used two devices to kind of get it down. But just like anything else, once you start working with something, you kind of figure out, okay, what's the best way to go. I was using my X-Acto knife to kind of push it around to make sure it was completely centered. If you don't get it exactly centered on the sill, you'll have some red showing either on top or below. So this tape almost exactly covers the red. There is a little bit left, and you know, so I'm kind of using my knife. Now, one thing about using your X-Acto knife is that if you're not careful, if you press down too hard, you'll leave a little indentation in the tape. So that was happening a little bit, so I decided to, well, maybe use something that's not quite so sharp. Then I said, well, maybe try an eraser, and the eraser actually kind of worked a little bit. But it was hard to be exact on exactly what part of the tape is being moved. And I finally figured out that the best way to do it would be to go ahead and use the X-Acto knife. And then I used the eraser a little bit, but then I just used the back of the X-Acto knife and just made sure I did not press down very hard. Here I'm kind of looking down, kind of see if it's any, make sure it's kind of straight and everything. But it really actually, comparative to the microscale decals, I would rate these as easier to put on than the microscale decals. And one of the things that makes it easier is that you basically just take it right off the sheet there and just put it right down wherever you want it to go. And so that definitely cuts down a lot. You don't have to put it in water. Once you put it down, then as far as getting it into the exact position, I'd say it's probably equal with the decals. But then what's kind of nice about it with the tape is that you don't have to wait for it to dry, and that you don't have to do the different coats of clear coat and flat coat and everything to make sure it stays on. Now there'll be, you know, right now it stays on, seems to stay on, you know, real well once you have it in place where you want it. If you press down firmly on it and everything, it stays put. Now we'll see over time if it comes back off again. From what people have told me in comments, they've had it on for, you know, over a year and no signs at all of it coming back up again. Here I'm using this is a dissecting tool, but I'm kind of using that. I thought maybe that would not have as much of an indentation, but basically I just press down. The pressure on it cannot be too great, otherwise you leave an indentation. But you can use a light pressure, and then even though it's taped on, you can move it vertical up or down on the surface, and it will move a little bit. And then once you have it where you want it, then you press down hard on it. So you kind of just lay it on there lightly, and then you can move it around, and then it seems to work out pretty nice. All right, here it is completely taped up. One thing is, if you notice, I put the tape on the front of the locomotive also. And here's some of the cars that I did. I'll go over the cars here in a little bit. Did a couple cars too. It definitely was one thing that was really a lot easier on this was doing the front of the locomotive. The decals had a little bit of a problem going on the front because it wasn't, the front isn't, has a little space where there's an opening, and the decals had a hard time going over it. But as you can see, it looks pretty nice. There is a little bit of red on the bottom, but can't really see it just in normal viewing. So it's that doesn't quite cover everything, but it definitely, I think, looks very, very nice. And another big benefit is that you could probably do 5 or 6 locomotives from one sheet of the Smokebox Graphics reflective tape. And I think it was like $7 or something like that for the sheet. So it's not very expensive at all. And like I said, you can do 5 or 6 locomotives with it. For the decals, it basically took 2 sheets to do 3 locomotives. Each sheet cost $10. So for each locomotive, it came out to like $6 to $7 for each locomotive, as compared to $7 for 5 or 6 locomotives. So that's, definitely, it's like $1, a little bit over $1 per locomotive with the Smokebox. So that's definitely a cost advantage. The application, I think the Smokebox is easier to do than the decals. And as far as looks go, I think, it's pretty equal between the Smokebox and the decal. You really can't tell much of a difference between the two. They both look great. And here I'm doing some of the some cars. And so this is the reflective tape for cars. And I have a couple of covered hoppers here. These are both made by Scale Trains. The one that has the reflective tape on it is a rivet counter one, and the one on the bottom is a operators. And of course, the operators do not have the reflective tape on it, so you have to do some about that if you want to do post 2015. The era of my layout is like 2018. 2017, somewhere around there. And so putting it on is really pretty easy. It's basically just a case of removing it from the sheet and then carefully placing it down. And these are small or short pieces, so not as difficult to handle as the long pieces with the sills. On the sheet, you get a somewhat longer strip, which on this particular car goes on the ends. You notice there's the longer strip on the ends, and then shorter strips that go in between. Some cars have these put horizontal, like this particular car, and then there's some that go on vertically, just depending on the car. So I was kind of using the rivet counter one so I can make sure it's compatible or consistent with what I already have, and want to make sure it's consistent with the prototype. I did a second covered hopper with them being put on vertically, and we'll see that in a little bit. So there's 3 different sizes on the sheet. You have the long strip, the shorter strip, and then they have a short strip that's wider, like twice as wide. I'm not sure where those would go. But I'm sure there's some kind of application for those. So you have 3 basic types, and I basically try to get it in the right spot, get it horizontal as possible, and then press it down. And as I said before, on these cars, it definitely is, or I'm putting it on a car like this, you definitely can see the thickness, as compared to it being painted on or decals. So the rivet counter one, it's painted on. So there's no thickness at all that you can detect at all. But then with the Smokebox Graphics, you can see that there is, in fact, some thickness. So as it goes by, you can actually see that it's thick. It doesn't look like overly thick or anything, but you can definitely see that it's not painted on. But I really don't think that's an issue at all, because if you look at the prototype, you definitely can see some thickness, because basically most of the cars were built before 2015, so most of the tape, reflective tape, was put on post manufacture and post the car being painted. So as you look at the cars going by on the prototype, you can see that this is a piece of tape that's put on there, and you can actually see the thickness of the tape on the prototype. So it doesn't look bad. It actually looks a little bit even more prototypical for there to be some thickness. So I definitely like the look of the Smokebox Graphics, and these were very, very simple and easy to put on. Probably took maybe just a few minutes, under 5 minutes to do a car. I have probably about 100 of them to do, so still quite a task. Maybe not quite 100, but I've been trying to buy all my cars with the safety stripes already painted on. I do have a few, maybe it's more like 50 cars that don't have it, that I'm going to have to do it with the Smokebox Graphics. And then I'm thinking also, when I weather these cars, I may have to put them on cars that have been weathered, which I think is going to be kind of a cool look, because you definitely see that on the prototype, where the cars are dirty and rusted and so forth, and then they put the smoke box, or they put the reflective tape over on top of what's already an existing weathering on the car. But as you can see, it's pretty easy, definitely very easy to put on, and definitely not no issues as far as putting them on. Very easy. Definitely recommend it. These are also like $7. And you could probably do, I probably should have looked at the package to see how many there are, but you could probably do 20 cars with one sheet. So again, extremely cost effective. And I would definitely recommend them. All right, here's some covered hoppers. Here's one that's not been done. That's another operator. Here's the rivet counter with the painted on safety stripes. And then here's the one that you saw me doing in the video. This is the Smokebox Graphics. And if you look closely, you can see that you can see the thickness of them. But it looks prototypical, to be honest with you. Maybe a little bit thicker than it would be on the prototype, but it looks pretty comparable. So there's the difference between the two. And then here you have another covered hopper with it, the stripes being vertical. So again, I think it looks pretty good. I actually prefer the ones with the Smokebox Graphics to being painted on. Probably won't be putting on the Smokebox Graphics reflective tape until I start working on the weathering. But anyway, definitely highly recommend the Smokebox Graphics. Here you can see the train with the reflective tape going through some scenery. I put it on phone mode for those of you watching on your phone. Hopefully this will look maybe a little bit better for you. I'm not sure how it's going to work with holding the phone, but anyway, get an idea how it looks with the reflective tape from Smokebox Graphics. Highly recommended. All right, we'll go ahead and end here. There's a bit of a video here of the train going through on the phone mode. Just kind of did this as an experiment. But thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Really appreciate your support of the channel. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.